Captain Jake Morrison stood in his office aboard the space station orbiting Earth. The message on his screen made no sense. He read it 3 times before calling his second-in-command. "Lisa, get in here. You need to see this." Admiral Lisa Grant walked into the room. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Jake had worked with her for 10 years. She never looked confused about anything. Today, she looked confused. "The Galactic Council wants what?" she asked. Jake turned his screen toward her. "They want our best soldiers. That part makes sense. But look at this line here." Lisa read out loud. "Humans must bring their companion creatures from Earth. All species types welcome." She looked at Jake. "What does that mean?" "I have no idea, but the message came from the Council's highest level. This is not a request. It's an order. The Galactic Council ruled over 200 different alien species. Earth had joined only 50 years ago. Humans were still the new kids in a very old neighborhood. When the Council gave orders, smart people followed them." Jake walked to his window. Below, Earth turned slowly in space. It looked peaceful from here. He knew better. Earth was what the galaxy called a deathworld. Most planets that grew intelligent life were safe, calm places. Earth was different. Earth tried to kill everything that lived on it. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, ice ages, asteroid impacts, and predators that hunted in packs. Humans survived. All of it. They became tough, smart, and very good at fighting. That was why other species hired them as soldiers and guards. But companion creatures? Jake thought about his dog back home. Rex was a German shepherd, smart, loyal, and brave. But what did the aliens want with dogs, sir? Lisa was reading more of the message. "It says here that the threat is something called the Void Swarm. They came from outside our galaxy. They already destroyed 3 star systems." Jake felt cold. 3 star systems meant billions of dead people, maybe trillions. "How long do we have?" 2 weeks to get to Sanctuary Station. That's where all the species are meeting." Jake sat down heavily. 2 weeks to prepare for a war against something that could destroy entire solar systems. And they wanted him to bring pets. "What kind of companion creatures do you think they mean?" Lisa asked. "I don't know. Dogs, maybe? Cats? Horses?" Jake shook his head. "This is crazy. We're going to fight aliens from another galaxy, and they want us to bring animals." Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Maybe they know something. We don't." The next week was chaos. Jake sent messages to every military base on Earth. "Bring your working dogs. Bring your horses. If you have trained birds or any other animals that work with soldiers, bring them too." The responses were not encouraging. Colonel Ben Parker from the cavalry units thought it was a joke. "You want me to bring horses to a space battle?" "Sir, with respect, that's insane." Sergeant Tony Chen was more direct. "My dog Rex is a good soldier, but he's a dog. What's he going to do against aliens?" Dr. Amy Rodriguez was the only one who seemed excited. She was a scientist who studied how different species work together. "Captain, this could be amazing. No other species in the galaxy has developed partnerships with animals like we have." "Why not?" Jake asked. "Most worlds only evolved one intelligent species. They either killed off all the other animals or never learned to work with them. We're unique." Jake hoped she was right, because in 1 week they would load their ships with soldiers, weapons, and apparently every dog, horse, and trained bird they could find. The aliens were not impressed. Jake stood on the loading dock at Luna Base, watching crates of supplies move on to the transport ships. In one area, soldiers loaded ammunition and weapons. In another, they loaded dog food and horse feed. Commander Vextar of the Krillian Empire was visiting. The Krillians looked like giant insects with 4 arms and armor-plated skin. They were famous throughout the galaxy as warriors. Humans bring pets to war? Vextar clicked his mandibles in what Jake had learned was laughter. Earth creatures are weak. Krillian warriors need no companions. Jake watched Rex and the other military dogs being loaded into climate-controlled cargo bays. The dogs looked alert and ready. They had no idea they were going to fight monsters from another galaxy. Maybe, Jake said, but they're our partners, not pets. Vextar made more clicking sounds. Partners? They are animals. They cannot think. They cannot plan. They can only follow simple commands. Jake thought about all the times Rex had saved soldiers' lives, finding hidden explosives, tracking enemies through jungles, sensing danger before any human could see it. But he said nothing. Let the aliens think what they wanted. The Etherian delegation was even worse. They looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and large eyes. They claimed to be the most advanced species in the galaxy. Bringing animals shows primitive thinking, said Ambassador Keelthara. Advanced species do not need such crude partnerships, Dr. Rodriguez tried to explain. These animals have abilities that our technology cannot match. They can detect things we cannot see or smell or hear. Impossible, Keelthara said. Our sensors can detect particles across 17 different spectrums. No biological creature could surpass such technology. The Nexari were crystal beings who communicated through light patterns. They did not speak, but their translator made their thoughts clear. Uncontrolled biological weapons pose risk to coordinated operations, suggest leaving creatures on homeworld. Jake was getting tired of this. They're not weapons, they're soldiers, just like us. More light patterns from the Nexari. Animals cannot be soldiers. Soldiers require intelligence, training, and discipline. Jake looked at the military working, dogs preparing to board the ships. Every one of them had years of training. They followed complex commands. They worked as teams. They risked their lives to save humans they had never met before. I think you might be surprised, he said. The loading continued through the night. Dogs, horses, a few trained ravens, and even some dolphins in special transport tanks. Jake had no idea why Admiral Grant insisted on bringing dolphins to a space battle, but she had her reasons. As the last transport ship filled up, Jake stood with Lisa on the observation deck. Below them, humanity's strangest army prepared for war. Do you really think this will work? Lisa asked. Jake watched Rex being settled into his quarters. The dog looked calm and confident. He trusted the humans around him completely. I don't know, Jake said. But I know one thing. Every one of those animals down there has survived on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. Maybe that counts for something. The ships launched the next morning. Destination, Sanctuary Station. Mission, stop the Void Swarm from destroying the galaxy. Cargo, the finest soldiers humanity could produce, and their partners from Earth. Sanctuary Station hung in space like a metal city. It was bigger than most moons. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its ports. Jake Morrison had never seen so many different alien species in one place. The human transports found their assigned docking bay. Through the windows, Jake could see other ships arriving. The Krillian war fleet looked like flying fortresses covered in weapons. Etherian ships were smooth and elegant, like art pieces that happened to fly. The Nexari traveled in crystal formations that bent light in strange ways. Impressive, Admiral Lisa Grant said, joining Jake at the window. Every major military power in the galaxy is here. And they all think we're crazy for bringing animals, Jake replied. The docking process took hours. Human ships had to wait while alien vessels with more advanced technology claimed the best spots. Finally, Jake's transport connected to the station's docking tube. General Marcus Webb met them at the airlock. He was a big man with a gray beard and tired eyes. He had been dealing with aliens for 20 years. "Welcome to the circus," he said. "Fair warning, they're not happy about our four-legged passengers." Jake followed the general through the station's corridors. The halls were wide enough for species much larger than humans. Gravity was set to galactic standard, which felt light to Jake. The air smelled strange, too clean, with a metallic taste. They passed groups of alien soldiers. Krillian warriors marched in perfect formation, their forearms carrying weapons Jake did not recognize. Etherian officers glided past without making sound. A group of energy beings that looked like living fire floated through the walls. "How many species are here?" Jake asked. 237, Webb replied. "Biggest military gathering in galactic history. And they all want to know why we brought pets." The main briefing hall was enormous. It could hold thousands of beings. Different sections had different atmosphere controls for species that breathed different gases. Translation devices floated everywhere, turning alien languages into words humans could understand. At the center of the hall stood a massive holographic display. It showed the Milky Way galaxy with 3 dark spots where star systems used to be. Red markers showed where the void swarm was moving next. Dr. Amy Rodriguez was already there, setting up her equipment. She had brought detailed files on every animal the humans transported. Charts, videos, and scientific data filled her portable screens. "Any luck convincing them?" Jake asked. Amy shook her head. "They think we've lost our minds. A photonic commander asked me why we would bring primitive biological sensors when they have quantum detection arrays." Staff Sergeant Tony Chen approached with his dog, Rex. The German shepherd looked alert but calm. His nose was constantly moving, taking in all the new scents. "How's Rex handling all this?" Jake asked. "Better than me," Tony replied. "He's picking up scents I can't even imagine. Look at his ears." Rex's ears were constantly turning toward sounds humans could not hear. His eyes tracked movement that was too fast or too small for human vision. Whatever was happening on this station, Rex was aware of more of it than any human. Commander Vextar approached their group. The massive Krillian moved with surprising grace for something that looked like an armored insect. "Human Morrison," Vextar said. "Krillian warriors wish to see demonstration of your creatures." Jake looked at Tony. "Show him." Tony gave Rex a series of hand signals. The dog immediately lay down, then crawled forward on his belly. At another signal, he jumped up and began searching the area around them. His nose worked constantly as he moved in a careful pattern. Suddenly, Rex sat down and stared at a specific spot on the floor. Tony walked over and knelt down. After feeling around for a moment, he found a small object hidden in a crack between floor panels. "Training device," Tony explained to Vextar. "I placed it there earlier to test Rex's detection abilities in this new environment." Vextar's mandibles clicked rapidly. Impressive, but Krillian sensors would have found object faster. "Maybe," Tony said. "But could your sensors find it if it was invisible to electronics, or if it existed in multiple dimensions at once?" The Krillian commander went quiet. Ambassador Keelthara of the Etherians joined the group. Her silver skin seemed to glow under the station's lights. "Curious display," she said, "but hardly military-grade capability." Our psychic networks can detect threats across vast distances instantly. Dr. Rodriguez spoke up. These animals evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them. They developed senses we barely understand. They can detect things that exist beyond normal space-time. Impossible, Keelthera said. No biological creature could surpass Etherian's psychic abilities. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Red lights flashed as automated voices announced an emergency in multiple languages. All personnel to battle stations. Unknown contacts approaching outer sensor grid. Repeat, unknown contacts approaching. The briefing hall erupted into controlled chaos. Military commanders from dozens of species rushed to their stations. Holographic displays showed sensor readings from the station's outer defenses. Jake watched the displays with growing concern. The sensors showed nothing. Empty space where something was definitely approaching. Every few seconds, brief energy signatures would appear and disappear like ghosts. "What are we looking at?" Jake asked General Webb. "Void swarm scouts," Webb replied grimly. "They phase in and out of our reality. Makes them almost impossible to track." On the displays, the first clear image appeared. It was like looking at a nightmare given form. The creature was roughly ship-sized, but had no fixed shape. It flowed like liquid shadow, while parts of it simply were not there. Empty spaces that hurt to look at. The station's weapons opened fire. Energy beams and missiles passed through the creature without effect. It was not entirely present in their dimension. Jake noticed Rex during all this excitement. The dog was not looking at the displays. He was looking at empty air near the ceiling, his hackles raised and his lips pulled back in a silent snarl. "Tony," Jake said quietly. "Where is Rex looking?" Tony followed his dog's gaze. "I don't see anything." "Neither do I. But Rex does." Dr. Rodriguez was watching too. Her eyes went wide as she understood what this meant. "Captain," she said urgently, "I think Rex can sense something our equipment cannot detect." The void creature on the sensors suddenly vanished completely. All the displays showed empty space. Again. The alien commanders looked confused and frustrated, but Rex continued staring at the same spot, his body tense and ready to fight something none of them could see. "General Webb," Jake said, "I think we need to talk. Right now." The next hour changed everything. In a secure briefing room, Jake explained what they had observed. Rex could detect the void creatures when billion-credit sensor arrays could not. General Webb listened carefully. So did the alien commanders who had been summoned to hear this impossible claim. "You suggest," Commander Vextar said slowly, "that Earth Animal has capabilities superior to Krillian military technology?" "That's exactly what I'm suggesting," Jake replied. Ambassador Keelthera made a sound like wind chimes. "Preposterous! No primitive creature could surpass advanced civilizations." Dr. Rodriguez spread her data across the table. Earth animals evolved for millions of years against predators that used every trick imaginable. Camouflage, stealth, poisonous attacks, and yes, limited dimensional shifting. Some Earth predators can briefly phase between realities to catch prey. The room went very quiet. "These animals," Amy continued, "developed senses to survive threats that your species never faced. What you call primitive instinct might actually be advanced multidimensional perception." General Webb looked at the alien commanders. "Gentlemen, ladies, energy beings, I think we need to reconsider our strategy." Through the window, more void creatures flickered in and out of existence. The galaxy's finest weapons could barely scratch. Them. But Rex was still watching, still tracking their movements through senses no one else understood. Maybe the galaxy was about to learn why Earth was called a death world. The war room deep inside Sanctuary Station buzzed with activity. Holographic displays showed star maps, battle reports, and sensor readings from across the galaxy. None of the news was good. Captain Jake Morrison stood beside a massive table where alien commanders studied the latest intelligence reports. The Void Swarm was worse than anyone had imagined. "They hit the Keller system 6 hours ago," reported Admiral Zefani of the Photonic Corps. The energy being's form flickered as she spoke. 12 billion Calarians dead in minutes. The entire star system is now empty. General Marcus Webb pulled up the sensor logs. Where 3 planets and 2 space stations used to orbit a yellow star, there was nothing. Not destroyed, gone. As if they had never existed. "How is that possible?" asked Commander Vextar. The Krillian's 4 arms gestured at different displays. Krillian weapons can destroy planets. But to erase them completely from reality. Dr. Amy Rodriguez studied the readings with growing excitement and fear. They're not just destroying matter, they're removing it from space-time itself. The void. Creatures exist across multiple dimensions. When they attack, they drag their targets into somewhere else. Ambassador Keelthara of the Etherians spoke in her musical voice. "Our psychic networks cannot detect them. They have no minds as we understand the concept. It is like trying to read the thoughts of empty space." The Nexari delegates communicated through rapid light patterns. Their translator device announced, "Quantum sensors detect nothing. Void entities exist in states unknown to galactic science. Current military technology ineffective." Jake watched Rex during the briefing. Tony Chen's German Shepherd lay quietly beside his handler, but his eyes kept moving to different parts of the room. Sometimes he would tense up for no visible reason, then relax again. "Rex is doing it again," Jake whispered to Dr. Rodriguez. Amy followed his gaze. "Sensing things we cannot detect. Captain, I think these creatures are already here, on the station." That thought sent cold fear through Jake's chest. "Here? Now?" Think about it. They phase in and out of reality. Our sensors can't track them. They could be anywhere, scouting our defenses. General Webb overheard their conversation. "Are you saying we're being watched?" Before Amy could answer, new alarms sounded. The displays lit up with contacts approaching from 3 directions. But these were not the small scout ships they had seen before. "Mother of God," Webb breathed. The main display showed something that defied description. It was larger than any ship in the galactic fleet. Parts of it existed in normal space, while other sections phased through dimensions that human eyes could not process. Looking at it too long made Jake's head hurt. "Void Swarm. Primary battle form," announced the station's computer. "Estimated mass, unknown. Composition, unknown. Weapons capability, extreme threat level." Around the battle form, smaller entities moved like parasites around a giant. They flickered in and out of existence, never staying solid long enough for weapons to target them. The galactic fleet moved to intercept. Jake had never seen so many warships in one place. Krillian dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. Elegant Etherian vessels that could bend space itself. Photonic ships made of pure energy. Crystal formations from the Nexari that could slice through. Asteroids. They opened fire as one. Energy beams, quantum torpedoes, reality-warping missiles, and weapons. Jake had no names for, struck the void entity. For a moment, space itself lit up with the combined firepower of 200 civilizations. The void creature absorbed it all without damage. Then it began to change. It's adapting, Dr. Rodriguez said in horror. Learning from each attack. Parts of the entity shifted to become immune to energy weapons. Other sections developed armor against physical projectiles. In real time, it was evolving defenses against everything the galaxy could throw at it. Then it struck back. Weapons that existed, partially outside normal space, passed through shields like they were not there. The first Krillian dreadnought simply came apart, its armor and hull dissolving into nothing. A photonic vessel winked out of existence between one moment and the next. "Fall back," General Webb ordered. "All ships retreat to defensive positions." But the void creatures were faster. They moved through space and dimensions simultaneously, appearing wherever they wanted to be. The Galactic fleet found itself fighting an enemy that could attack from directions that did not exist. Jake felt helpless watching the battle. The finest military technology in the galaxy was useless against creatures that existed by different rules. "Sir," Tony Chen spoke up quietly. "Rex is going crazy." Jake looked down. The German shepherd was on his feet, his entire body rigid with attention. His eyes tracked movements across the room that no one else could see. His nose worked constantly, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. "He can sense them," Amy realized. "Even here, inside the station. They're everywhere." Ambassador Keelthera turned to look at the dog. "Impossible. Our psychic networks detect no hostile presence." "Your psychic networks are useless here," Amy shot back. "These creatures don't exist fully in our reality, but Rex evolved on a world where predators used every trick to hunt, including limited dimensional shifting." Commander Vextar's mandibles clicked in rapid thought. "Earth animal can detect enemies that Krillian sensors cannot find?" "Not just detect," Amy said, her voice rising with excitement. "Look at his behavior. He's tracking multiple contacts. He knows where they are, how they're moving, even what they might do next." The battle outside was going badly. Half the Galactic fleet was gone, and the survivors could barely land hits on enemies they could not see coming. General Webb made a decision that would change the war. "Dr. Rodriguez, how many animals did we bring?" 800 dogs, 200 horses, 50 ravens, and 12 dolphins in transport tanks. Can they all detect these things? Amy thought quickly. Different animals evolved different senses. Dogs have incredible smell and hearing. Horses can sense danger across vast distances. Ravens can navigate impossible spaces. Dolphins can use sound to see through solid matter. And they all evolved on Earth, a world that tried to kill them every day for millions of years. "Yes, sir." Webb turned to the alien commanders. "Ladies, gentlemen, energy beings, I have a proposal. Our technology cannot fight these creatures, but our animals can find them." The aliens looked at him like he had lost his mind. "You suggest," Vextar said slowly, "that primitive Earth creatures could succeed where advanced galactic military fails?" "I'm suggesting that maybe advanced is not always better. These animals survived on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. They developed senses that your civilizations never needed." Keelthera made her wind chime sound of disbelief. "Etherian psychic abilities surpass any biological sense." "Really?" Jake interrupted. "Then why can't you detect the void creatures that Rex has been tracking for the past hour?" The room went silent except for the sounds of battle from the displays. Ships dying, stations being erased from reality, and billions of lives ending in ways that defied understanding. Rex continued his low growling, his eyes following invisible enemies that no technology could find. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. On Earth, we have a saying, the best hunters are not the strongest or the fastest. They are the ones who understand their prey. She gestured toward Rex. This dog understands predators in ways your species never had to learn, because Earth taught him that survival means sensing danger before it can strike. General Webb looked at the alien commanders. The question is, are you willing to learn from a Deathworld dog? Or would you rather keep losing ships to enemies you cannot see? Outside the station, another Etherian vessel vanished in a flash of non-light. Commander Vextar was the first to speak. Krillian Empire will listen to human proposal. The others followed reluctantly. Even the proud Etherians had to admit their psychic networks were useless here. What do you need? Webb asked Dr. Rodriguez. Time to deploy our teams, and commanders willing to trust animals they think are primitive. Jake looked at Rex, who was still tracking invisible enemies with senses no one understood. Rex has been trying to tell us something since we got here, Jake said. Maybe it's time we started listening. The war for the galaxy was about to take a very different turn. The Krillian flagship was the size of a small city. Its corridors could fit 3 humans walking side by side, and its ceilings were tall enough for species much larger than humans. Jake Morrison felt small walking through its halls. Beside him, Staff Sergeant Tony Chen kept pace with his dog Rex. The German shepherd looked calm but alert. His nose worked constantly, taking in the strange smells of alien technology and different atmosphere mixtures. "Still think this is insane," muttered Sergeant Danny Price. His partner, a Belgian Malinois named Scout, trotted beside him with her ears constantly moving toward sounds only she could hear. "Insane or not, it's our job," Jake replied. He carried a weapon designed for fighting void creatures, theoretical technology that might work against enemies that existed in multiple dimensions. It had never been tested in real combat. Commander Vextar met them at the bridge. The massive Krillian's 4 arms gestured toward tactical displays showing the approaching void forces. "Human Morrison," Vextar said. "Krillian sensors detect nothing. How will Earth animals succeed where our technology fails?" Before Jake could answer, Rex suddenly went rigid. His ears snapped forward and his lips pulled back in a silent snarl. He was staring at empty air near the main display. "Contact," Tony said quietly. Scout confirmed it a second later, her body tense and ready to spring. Both dogs were tracking something that none of the bridge crew could see. "Where?" Vextar demanded. Tony pointed to where Rex was looking. "Right there, about 3 meters from the navigation station." The Krillian commander activated every sensor on the ship. Advanced scanners that could detect individual atoms found nothing in that area. "Krillian technology sees nothing," Vextar said. "Your technology is looking in the wrong place," Jake replied. "Rex is not seeing something in our dimension. He is sensing something that exists across multiple realities." Rex began to move, his nose tracking something invisible as it moved around the bridge. Scout followed the same path a few seconds later. Both dogs were watching the same invisible target. Dr. Amy Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system from Sanctuary Station. "Captain, we are monitoring from here. The dogs are tracking something that is definitely present, but not fully, materialized in our space-time." Suddenly, alarms screamed throughout the ship. The main display lit up with proximity warnings as void entities began materializing around the fleet. But this time was different. Instead of appearing without warning, the attacks came exactly where Rex and Scout had been looking. The invisible scout had been marking targets for the main assault. "All hands, battle stations," Vextar commanded. "Prepare for boarding actions." The bridge shook as void entities phased through the ship's hull. Emergency lights flickered as creatures that existed partially outside reality moved through solid matter like it was empty space. Jake watched his weapon readings spike as something approached from behind. He spun around but saw nothing. Rex was already there, barking at empty air 3 feet to Jake's left. Jake aimed where Rex indicated and fired. The experimental weapon discharged energy across multiple dimensional frequencies. For a moment something became visible, a writhing mass of darkness with too many angles. Then it dissolved with a sound like reality tearing. "It worked!" Jake shouted. Around the bridge, Krillian warriors were firing at random, trying to hit enemies they could not see. Most of their shots missed completely, but Tony and Danny directed their weapons based on where their dogs were looking. Every shot, guided by the animals, found a target. Sergeant Price followed Scout's lead to a corner where she was growling at nothing. He fired his weapon into empty space and was rewarded with the sight of a void creature writhing as it died across multiple dimensions. "Impossible," breathed a Krillian officer. "Earth animals provide targeting data more accurate than our computers." The battle continued for 20 minutes. When it ended, the Krillian flagship had suffered minimal damage. Other ships in the fleet were not so lucky. Those without human-animal teams lost entire sections to void entities that attacked from directions their sensors could not detect. Commander Vextar stood among the bodies of destroyed void creatures. Some were visible now that they were dead. Others remained invisible even in death, marked only by scorch marks on the deck where they had fallen. "Krillian Empire has underestimated Earth animals," Vextar admitted. "Request immediate transfer of human-animal teams to all Krillian vessels." Jake activated his communicator. "Admiral Grant, are you monitoring this?" Admiral Lisa Grant's voice came back immediately. "Affirmative, Captain. We saw everything. Every ship in the fleet is requesting animal support teams." "How many teams? Can we deploy?" "All of them. Dr. Rodriguez has been preparing for this since we left Earth." The next few hours transformed the war effort. Human handlers and their animal partners spread across the galactic fleet. Dogs that could sense void entities across dimensional barriers. Horses that somehow knew when attacks were coming before they happened. Ravens that could navigate spaces that folded in on themselves. Jake found himself coordinating between species that had never worked together before. Etherian psychics tried to understand how dogs could sense minds that did not exist. Nexari crystal beings studied animal behavior patterns with scientific fascination. "Dr. Rodriguez," Jake said over the comm. "How are the other animals performing?" Amy's voice was excited. "Better than we hoped. The dolphins are detecting void movements underwater on contested planets. They can use sound to map creatures that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." "What about the ravens?" "Incredible. They are navigating void ship interiors that our people cannot understand. Spaces that exist in impossible geometries. The birds treat it like a 3-dimensional puzzle." Lieutenant Kate Sullivan's voice joined the conversation from another ship. "The ravens are leading boarding parties through areas that would drive humans insane. Corridors that loop back on themselves. Rooms that are bigger inside than outside. The birds just fly through it like it's normal." Jake thought about Earth's evolutionary history. Birds had to navigate 3-dimensional space while avoiding predators that could attack from any direction. Maybe navigating impossible spaces was not that different. On the tactical displays, the battle was turning. For the first time since the war began, the Galactic Fleet was winning engagements against void forces, ships with human-animal teams. Reported success rates 10 times higher than vessels relying only on technology. But the victory came with a cost that hit the humans harder than any alien could understand. Jake received the casualty reports with a heavy heart. 12 dogs killed in action, 3 horses lost during a ground assault, 2 ravens that died leading rescue missions through collapsing void structures. Each animal death was reported with the same detail as any human casualty: name, unit, mission, status, and circumstances of death. The animals were not equipment that could be replaced. They were soldiers who had given their lives for the mission. The alien commanders did not understand human reactions to these losses. "They are only animals," Ambassador Keelthera said during the next briefing. "Useful tools, but ultimately replaceable." Jake's response surprised everyone, including himself. "No," he said firmly. "They are not tools. They are partners who chose to fight beside us. Every one of them could have run away when the shooting started. They stayed because they trusted us to fight for them the same way they fight for us." Vextar's mandibles clicked in thought. Human emotional attachment to other species is unexpected. It's not just emotional, Dr. Rodriguez explained. It's practical. These animals perform better because they know we will die to protect them. That level of trust cannot be programmed into a machine. The briefing continued with reports from across the war zone. Human-animal teams were being deployed to every critical mission. The success rate was transforming what had been a hopeless war into something that might actually be winnable. But Jake noticed something in the reports that worried him. The void creatures were adapting again. They were beginning to target the animals specifically, recognizing them as the primary threat to their invasion. "Dr. Rodriguez," Jake said, "they are learning to hunt our animals." Amy's voice was grim. "I know. The next phase of this war is going to be very different. They know now that Earth animals can detect them. They will try to eliminate that advantage." Jake looked around the bridge at aliens who were finally beginning to understand what humans had brought to this war. Not just advanced weapons or superior tactics, but partnerships forged by millions of years of shared survival on a world that tried to kill everything. "Then we had better be ready to protect them," Jake said. "Because if we lose our animals, we lose the war." Through the viewports, the Galactic Fleet moved toward the next battle. Ships that had been failing against invisible enemies now hunted with confidence, guided by senses that evolution had spent eons perfecting. The Deathworld. Animals were teaching the galaxy how to fight monsters. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan had seen many strange things during her military career, but she had never expected to plan a boarding assault based on the flight patterns of ravens. "The ship's interior does not follow normal physics," reported Corporal Andy Walker over the comm. His raven, Odin, perched on his shoulder while peering into a corridor that seemed to twist back on itself. "The bird says we can reach the command center by going through what looks like a dead end." Kate studied the scout reports from her position aboard the Etherian vessel Starlight. The void mothership they needed to capture was 3 kilometers long and existed in at least 4 dimensions simultaneously. Human boarding parties had tried twice to navigate its interior. Both times, they had gotten lost in spaces that changed while they walked through them. "Trust the bird," advised Dr. Amy Rodriguez from Sanctuary Station. "Ravens evolved to navigate 3-dimensional forest environments while avoiding predators. This is just a more complex version of the same problem." Kate activated her communicator to address the mixed assault team. All units, follow the ravens. Do not try to understand the ship's layout. Just follow where the birds lead you. The assault force was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human Marines worked alongside Krillian shock troopers, Etherian, psychic warriors, and Nexari crystal soldiers. But leading them all were 6 ravens and their human handlers. As they moved through the void ship, Kate began to understand why the birds succeeded where technology failed. The ravens did not try to map the impossible spaces. They simply flew where instinct told them to go, treating corridors that folded in on themselves like particularly challenging forest paths. "Contact front!" called Sergeant Ben Parker from another part of the ship. Parker was leading what everyone called the impossible mission, a cavalry charge inside a spaceship. His unit had brought horses aboard specifically for this assault. Kate had thought it was insane until she learned. Why, the void creatures moved by phasing in and out of reality. When they attacked, they briefly became solid to cause damage, then immediately shifted back to their dimensional hiding places. Most infantry could not react fast enough to hit them during these brief materialization periods, but horses were different. They had evolved as prey animals on a world full of predators that used ambush tactics. Their reflexes and pattern recognition were optimized for avoiding attacks that came from unexpected directions. The horses know when and where the void creatures will materialize, Parker reported as sounds of battle echoed through the comm. They are dodging attacks before the enemies even become solid. Kate watched her tactical display as Parker's cavalry unit moved through the ship's corridors. The horses carried human riders armed with dimensional weapons, but they also fought as partners. When a void creature tried to ambush the unit, the horses sensed it coming and moved their riders out of danger while positioning them for counterattacks. "This is insane," muttered Ambassador Keel Thara, monitoring the assault from the Etherian command ship. "Riding animals through a space battle. It defies all military logic." "Military logic failed against these enemies," Kate replied. "We are using survival logic instead." Her Raven team reached what Odin indicated was the ship's command center. The room beyond the door was impossible to describe. It existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with control systems that extended into spaces human eyes could not. "See? How do we destroy controls we cannot even perceive?" asked Corporal Walker. Odin provided the answer by flying directly to specific points in the room. Each location he landed on contained control systems that existed partially in normal space. The humans could not see the complete alien technology, but they could damage the parts that existed in their dimension. The Ravens had mapped the entire command center's vulnerable points in seconds. Meanwhile, Sergeant Danny Price was discovering that dogs could do more than detect void creatures. His unit had been assigned to protect the ship's reactor core, but they found something unexpected. "The void creatures are not just randomly attacking," Danny reported. "Scout is tracking their movement patterns. They are following specific routes through the ship." His Belgian Malinois was leading him through corridors where void creatures had passed. The dog could follow scent trails that existed across multiple dimensions, tracking enemies that left no physical evidence of their passage. "They are hunting our animals specifically," Danny realized with growing alarm. "This is not random violence. They are trying to eliminate our detection capabilities." Kate felt cold fear as she understood the implications. The void creatures had learned that Earth animals were their primary threat. They were adapting their tactics to target the human-animal teams first. "All units, priority protection for animal partners," Kate ordered. "They are going after our animals." The battle inside the void ship became a different kind of warfare. Instead of humans protecting animals that provided support, it became animals and humans protecting each other as equal partners in combat. Kate watched as Corporal Walker threw himself between Odin and a void creature that materialized specifically to attack the Raven. The bird repaid the favor by guiding Walker's counterattack to hit the creature's vulnerable core. On another deck, Sergeant Parker's horse reared up to strike a void entity that was trying to reach Parker from behind. The horse could sense the attack coming through dimensions that human reflexes could not process. But the most shocking display came from an unexpected source. "Kate," came Dr. Rodriguez's voice over the comm. "Are you monitoring the dolphin tanks?" "What about them?" "The dolphins we brought in transport tanks are not just detecting underwater void movements. They are using echolocation to map the entire ship's structure across multiple dimensions." Kate pulled up the sonar readings from the dolphin tanks aboard various ships in the fleet. The dolphins were using sound to see through solid matter and into dimensional spaces that human technology could not detect. They are providing three-dimensional maps of void ship interiors to all our assault teams, Amy continued. Somehow, dolphin sonar works across dimensional barriers. Kate realized she was witnessing something that would change warfare forever, not just humans working with animals, but different species coordinating their unique abilities to overcome challenges that no single species could handle alone. The dolphins mapped impossible spaces. The ravens navigated them. The horses provided mobility and attack timing. The dogs detected enemies and tracked their movements, and the humans tied it all together with weapons and tactics. "Command center secured," Kate reported as her team finished destroying the void ship's control systems. "Odin led us to every critical component. Reactor core secured," reported Danny Price. "Scout tracked and eliminated 6 void infiltrators that our sensors never detected." "Engineering secured," came Parker's voice. "The horses kept us mobile while we planted charges on systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously." The void mothership began to collapse as its dimensional anchors failed. The assault teams evacuated through passages that the Ravens mapped in real time, avoiding corridors that were folding back into non-existence. Back aboard the fleet ships, Kate reviewed the mission reports with growing amazement. The assault had succeeded not because of superior technology or overwhelming force, but because of cooperation between species that had learned to trust each other completely. "The alien commanders want to understand our methods," reported General Marcus Webb. "They are requesting training in what they call pack tactics." Kate laughed. Pack tactics. That's actually a good description. She thought about wolves hunting. Together, each member of the pack contributing different skills toward a common goal. That was what the human-animal teams had become. Packs that included multiple species working together. But the war was far from over. The void creatures were learning too, adapting their tactics to counter human-animal cooperation. The next, battles would test whether Earth's evolutionary partnerships could stay ahead of enemies that existed outside normal reality. "Dr. Rodriguez," Kate said over the comm, "how many more animals do we have in reserve?" "That's the problem," Amy replied, grimly. "We brought everything we could transport. 800 dogs, 200 horses, 50 ravens, 12 dolphins. If we lose them faster than we can deploy them, we lose our only advantage," Kate finished. Through the viewports, she could see more void ships approaching. Larger ones, this time carrying enemies that had learned from this defeat. The real test of the human-animal partnership was about to begin. Admiral Lisa Grant watched the tactical displays with growing horror. The void swarm had learned from their defeats. Instead of random attacks, they were now hunting human-animal teams with focused determination. They are targeting the animals. First, reported Captain Jake Morrison from the bridge of the flagship. Every engagement follows the same pattern. The void creatures ignore our weapons and go straight for the dogs. Lisa had seen the battle recordings. Void entities phasing through hull armor, past human soldiers, directly to where the military working dogs were positioned. They seemed to understand that removing Earth's animals would blind the galactic fleet. Casualties? Lisa asked, though she dreaded the answer. 43 dogs killed in the last 6 hours, Jake replied. 12 horses lost during the ground assault on Kepler Station. The void creatures are becoming better at targeting them. Each animal death hit the human crews harder than the aliens could understand. Lisa watched the faces of soldiers who had lost their partners. The grief was real, deep, and transformed into something much more dangerous. Rage. "Admiral," came the voice of Staff Sergeant Tony Chen. His dog Rex had been killed 3 hours earlier while detecting void infiltrators aboard a Nexari crystal ship. "Request permission to join the next assault wave." Lisa could hear the controlled fury in Tony's voice. She had seen this before in human soldiers who lost friends in combat, but losing an animal partner seemed to affect humans differently. The grief was personal in a way that even military commanders did not fully understand. "Tony, you need time to process Rex's death," Lisa said gently. "No, ma'am. I need to kill the things that murdered my partner." Dr. Amy Rodriguez's voice joined the conversation from the science station. "Admiral, we are seeing this reaction across all the human units. The animal deaths are affecting our people in ways the aliens cannot comprehend." Lisa understood. Humans had evolved alongside animals for thousands of years. The bond was deeper than simple military partnership. When the animals died, something primal awakened in their human companions. "Show me the latest engagement footage," Lisa ordered. The main display lit up with recordings from the battle at Rigel Colony. Lisa watched human soldiers fighting with a ferocity that shocked their alien allies. When void creatures killed military working dogs, the humans did not retreat or take cover. They advanced directly into enemy fire with weapons blazing. Corporal Sam Wright's reaction was typical. His German shepherd, Titan, had died protecting the colony's reactor core from void infiltrators. Wright's response was to grab an experimental dimensional weapon and charge straight into a group of void entities. He killed 6 of them before they could phase away. "The humans are not following standard tactical doctrine," observed Commander Vextar of the Krillian forces. "They attack without regard for personal safety after their animals die." "It's not tactical," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "It's emotional. On Earth, humans and animals formed bonds that go beyond simple cooperation. When their partners die, humans experience grief that transforms into protective fury." Ambassador Keel Thara of the Etherians spoke through the comm system. "This emotional response seems counterproductive. Grief clouds judgment and leads to tactical errors." "Does it?" Lisa asked, studying the battle results. "Look at the casualty ratios." The numbers were startling. Human units that had lost animal partners were fighting with effectiveness rates 3 times higher than normal. They were taking risks that should have gotten them killed, but their fury was making them more dangerous to the void creatures than any technology. "They are fighting like cornered animals themselves," Vextar observed. "When Krillian warriors lose equipment, they adapt tactics. When humans lose animals, they become more deadly." The observation was accurate and troubling. Lisa watched recordings of Sergeant Danny Price leading an assault after his Belgian Malinois scout was killed. Price fought through void defenses that should have stopped an entire squad, driven by rage that made him ignore wounds and fatigue, but the cost was becoming unsustainable. Earth had brought 800 dogs, 200 horses, 50 ravens, and 12 dolphins. They were losing animals faster than they could deploy new teams. "Dr. Rodriguez," Lisa said, "how long before we run out of animals?" "At current rates, 2 weeks. Maybe less if the void creatures keep targeting them specifically." The implications were clear. Without the animals, the galactic fleet would be fighting blind again. The war would return to its original hopeless state, with enemies that could not be detected or tracked. "We need a new strategy," Lisa decided. "Jake, convene a meeting with all unit commanders. Include the alien leadership." An hour later, the war room aboard Sanctuary Station held the strangest military conference in galactic history. Human officers sat beside Krillian warriors, Etherian psychics, Nexari crystal beings, and photonic energy entities. All of them were trying to solve the same problem. How do you protect animals in a war where the enemy specifically hunts them? Krillian forces suggest armor for Earth creatures, Commander Vextar offered. Protective suits that could shield them from void attacks. Dr. Rodriguez shook her head. The animals' effectiveness comes from their natural senses. Armor would interfere with their ability to detect dimensional intrusions. Etherian psychic networks could provide early warning, suggested Ambassador Keel Thara. Alert human teams when animals are being targeted. The void creatures exist outside psychic detection ranges, Jake pointed out. That's why we need the animals in the first place. The Nexari delegates communicated through rapid light patterns. Their translator announced, "Propose creating synthetic copies of animal sensory capabilities. Technology could replace biological detection systems." "We tried that," Amy said with frustration. "Spent 50 years trying to build sensors that match animal capabilities. Earth animals can detect things across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our technology can barely function in 4 dimensions, and these creatures exist in at least 7. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated an unsolvable problem. They needed the animals to fight the void creatures, but the void creatures were systematically eliminating the animals. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan spoke up from her position near the tactical displays. "What if we're thinking about this wrong?" "Explain," Lisa said. "We're trying to protect the animals from the void creatures, but what if instead we used the void creatures' targeting behavior against them?" Kate pulled up battle recordings on the main display. "Look at this footage. Every time void entities go after our animals, they have to become partially solid to attack. That makes them vulnerable for brief moments." Lisa studied the recordings with new interest. Kate was right. When void creatures attack the animals, they expose themselves to counterattack. "You're suggesting we use our animals as bait?" Jake asked. "No," Kate said firmly. "I'm suggesting we use the void creatures' obsession with our animals to predict where they will attack. If we know they will target the animals first, we can be ready for them." Dr. Rodriguez looked excited. "Tactical prediction based on enemy behavioral patterns. The void creatures have developed a hunting instinct. They see our animals as the primary threat and go after them before anything else. Which means, Lisa realized, we can set traps." The next phase of the war began 12 hours later. Instead of trying to hide their animals from void attacks, human units began using them as early warning systems and tactical bait. When void creatures phased aboard ships to hunt the dogs, they found human soldiers waiting with weapons specifically designed for close-range dimensional combat. The aliens watched in amazement as humans turned their greatest vulnerability into their most effective weapon. But the cost remained high. Every trap meant risking animal lives. Every tactical victory came at the price of partners that could not be replaced. Lisa watched the casualty reports with a heavy heart. The strategy was working, but it was built on the sacrifice of creatures that humans had grown to love. "Admiral," Tony Chen requested again, "permission to join the next assault." This time Lisa granted it. Tony had lost Rex, but his grief had transformed into something the void creatures would learn to fear. The war was evolving. Both sides were adapting, learning, becoming more deadly. But only one side was fighting for partners they loved enough to die for. That, Lisa realized, might make all the difference. The Void Swarm's primary stronghold hung in space like a wound in reality. It was larger than any structure the galaxy had ever built, existing simultaneously in 7 dimensions, while anchored to normal space-time by technologies that hurt to look at directly. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the assembled galactic fleet. Every species had contributed their finest warships. 200 different types of vessels surrounded the impossible fortress, preparing for the largest military operation in cosmic history. "Final intelligence reports," announced General Marcus Webb. "The Void Central Intelligence is inside that thing. If we can destroy it, the entire swarm loses coordination." Jake studied the tactical displays. The fortress was protected by dimensional barriers that shifted constantly, making conventional attack impossible. Worse, it was guarded by thousands of void entities that could phase in and out of reality at will. "Our animals will be essential for this mission," Dr. Amy Rodriguez reported from her station. "The fortress interior exists in non-Euclidean space. Only the ravens can navigate it. The dogs will be our only way to detect void defenders. The horses will provide mobility in areas where our vehicles cannot function." Admiral Lisa Grant looked grim. "How many animals do we have left?" 300 dogs, 80 horses, 20 ravens, and 4 dolphins," Amy replied. "We've lost more than half our animal partners." Jake felt the weight of those losses. Each number represented not just a tactical asset, but a living being that had trusted humans enough to follow them into hell. The surviving animals would be going into the most dangerous mission of the war. "All units report ready," came voices from across the fleet. Krillian shock troops, Etherian psychic warriors, Nexari crystal soldiers, and photonic energy beings, all of them working together for the first time in galactic history. But leading the assault would be human-animal teams from a world the galaxy had once dismissed as primitive. The attack began with a coordinated barrage from every ship in the fleet. Energy weapons, quantum torpedoes, reality-warping missiles, and experimental dimensional disruptors struck the fortress simultaneously. For a moment, space itself seemed to burn with the combined firepower of 200 civilizations. The fortress absorbed it all without visible damage. "Phase 2, Admiral Grant ordered. "Deploy boarding forces." Jake led the largest assault group aboard a modified transport ship. Around him, soldiers from dozens of species prepared for combat in environments that defied physics, but scattered. Among the alien warriors were humans with their animal partners. Staff Sergeant Tony Chen checked his equipment one final time. He had volunteered for the mission despite losing Rex 3 weeks earlier. His new partner was Luna, a young German shepherd who had already proven herself in combat. "You sure about this, Tony?" Jake asked. "Rex died for this mission," Tony replied. "I'm going to finish what he started." Lieutenant Kate Sullivan coordinated with her Raven team. Odin perched on her shoulder, his black eyes alert and intelligent. The bird had guided more successful missions than any human navigator. Sergeant Ben Parker readied his cavalry unit. The idea of charging through an interdimensional fortress on horseback still seemed insane, but the horses had proven they could sense and avoid void attacks better than any technology. "Remember," Dr. Rodriguez's voice came over the comm, "the animals can detect things we cannot see. Trust their instincts even when they contradict your equipment." The transport ships approached the fortress through dimensional barriers that shifted like liquid light. Human pilots guided their vessels along routes that the dolphins mapped using echolocation that somehow worked across multiple realities. As they penetrated the fortress's outer defenses, Jake began to understand the true scale of what they faced. The interior was vast beyond comprehension, with corridors that stretched for kilometers in directions that should not exist. "Luna's picking up multiple contacts," Tony reported. "Dozens of void entities, maybe hundreds." The German shepherd was tense with concentration, her nose working constantly as she detected enemies that existed partially outside normal space. Around the assault force, alien sensors showed empty corridors. "Odin says the main route is through the central core," Kate reported. "But the path goes through spaces that don't connect properly." Jake watched the Raven perch on Kate's arm, head tilted as if listening to sounds no one else could hear. The bird's natural ability to navigate three-dimensional forest environments had evolved into something that could process impossible geometries. The assault force moved deeper into the fortress, guided by senses that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. The ravens led them through corridors that folded back on themselves. The dogs detected ambushes from enemies that existed in multiple dimensions. The horses carried their riders through areas where the floor existed in 7 different realities simultaneously. "Contact!" shouted Sergeant Danny Price as his Belgian Malinois scout alerted to danger ahead. Void entities materialized from empty air, attacking with weapons that phased through conventional armor. But this time, the galactic forces were ready. Guided by animal senses, they targeted enemies before they fully materialized. The battle became a testament to cooperation between species. Krillian warriors followed dog alerts to target invisible enemies. Etherian psychics coordinated with ravens to navigate impossible spaces. Nixari crystal soldiers worked with horses to maintain mobility in shifting terrain. Jake watched in amazement as beings from across the galaxy learned to trust instincts they had never needed to develop. The Krillians, who had mocked Earth animals as primitive, now followed Luna's alerts without question. "She is better than our best sensors," Commander Vextar admitted over the comm. "Earth Dog detects enemies that Krillian technology cannot find." The assault pushed deeper into the fortress. With each level, the defenses became stranger and more deadly. Rooms that existed in multiple time streams simultaneously, corridors that were larger inside than outside, spaces where the laws of physics applied differently in each corner. Through it all, the Earth animals adapted with the flexibility that only evolution on a death world could provide. They treated impossible geometry like particularly challenging terrain. They sensed dangers that existed across multiple realities, as naturally as sensing predators in a forest. But the real test came when they reached the central core. The void intelligence was unlike anything the galaxy had encountered. It existed as a massive entity spread across all 7 dimensions simultaneously, its presence filling spaces that should not contain matter while extending into realities that human minds could barely process. "How do we fight something that big?" asked Ambassador Keel Thera, her psychic networks completely overwhelmed by the entity's alien nature. Jake watched the animals react to the central intelligence. Every dog, horse, raven, and dolphin in the assault force suddenly became alert in the same way. They were all sensing the same massive threat, but instead of showing fear, they showed determination. "They can see it," Dr. Rodriguez realized with excitement. "All of them. They are tracking the same target across multiple dimensions." What happened next would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy learned what evolution on a death world could produce. The animals began to coordinate as a single massive pack. Dogs across the fortress guided their human partners to strike at weak points that existed in normal space. Ravens led assault teams to areas where the entity was vulnerable to physical attack. Horses carried soldiers to positions where dimensional weapons could affect the creature's core consciousness. The dolphins, monitoring from the fleet ships, used their echolocation to map the entity's structure across all 7 dimensions, providing targeting data that no technology could match. For the first time in the war, the void intelligence was truly threatened. Its massive form writhed across multiple realities as Earth animals guided coordinated attacks that struck at its fundamental existence. "Impossible," breathed the Nexari translator, individual creatures coordinating as unified intelligence across dimensional barriers. Jake realized he was witnessing something that had never existed before in galactic history. Not just cooperation between species, but evolution in action. The animals were adapting to work together in ways their individual species had never needed to develop. The battle raged for hours across 7 dimensions. Void defenders swarmed to protect their central intelligence, but they found themselves fighting enemies they could not understand. Humans who fought with the fury of bereaved partners. Animals who coordinated with the precision of a single mind. When the void intelligence finally died, its death scream echoed across multiple realities. Throughout the galaxy, void entities lost coordination and began to retreat toward the galactic edge. The war was won, but as Jake stood among the exhausted survivors, human and alien alike, he realized something had changed forever. The galaxy had learned that the greatest strength came not from advanced technology or superior evolution, but from the willingness to trust partners who were different from yourself. The Earth animals had taught the galaxy how to fight as one people. That best warriors are not those who fight alone, but those who fight for others. Earth animals show that courage comes from love, not from lack of fear. Jake felt a deep satisfaction hearing those words from an alien student. The lessons Earth's animals had taught during the war were spreading beyond military applications. They were changing how the galaxy thought about cooperation, loyalty, and the bonds between different species. As evening approached, Jake made one final stop in the memorial garden. Near the back, in a quiet grove of cedar trees, stood a special memorial for Luna's predecessor. Rex, partner, protector, friend, he taught the galaxy that some bonds transcend species. Tony Chen was there again, this time with Luna playing nearby. The young German shepherd had found a stick and was bringing it back to Tony repeatedly, her tail wagging with the simple joy that dogs bring to any situation. "She's nothing like Rex," Tony said as Jake approached. Rex was serious, focused. All business. Luna just wants to play and make friends. But she's still a good partner? The best. Different from Rex, but just as brave when it matters. She proved that during the Rigel Station rescue last week. Jake had read the report. Luna had detected void remnants that were still hiding in The station's lower levels left behind when the main swarm retreated. Her alerts had saved 100 civilians who would have died from exposure to dimensional parasites. The war taught us something important, Tony continued, scratching Luna behind the ears. It's not about finding perfect partners. It's about choosing to trust each other completely. As Jake left the memorial garden, he thought about the changes rippling across the galaxy. The Interspecies Cooperation Academy was training the first generation of aliens to work with Earth animals. Exchange programs were bringing human-animal teams to worlds that had never seen such partnerships. But most importantly, the galaxy had learned that advanced technology and superior evolution were not enough to face the unknown. Sometimes survival required the willingness to trust partners who were different, to fight for those who could not fight for themselves, and to choose emotional bonds over purely logical decisions. The memorial garden would remain as a reminder of the price paid for those lessons. But it would also stand as proof that when Deathworld beasts marched beside humans, they carried something more powerful than weapons or technology. They carried the knowledge that true strength comes from those who choose to stand together when everything else fails. The galaxy would remember that lesson for a very long time. As Jake reached his quarters, he received a final message from Admiral Grant on Earth. "Jake, thought you'd like to know. We just received our first request from outside the Milky Way. The Andromeda Coalition wants to establish an embassy on Earth. They specifically mentioned wanting to learn about our animal partnership programs." Jake smiled as he looked out his window at the memorial garden below. Humans and aliens walked together among the trees, some carrying small Earth animals who were learning to trust new friends. The Deathworld had taught them. 3 months after the Void War ended, Captain Jake Morrison walked through the memorial garden on Sanctuary Station. The morning light fell softly on hundreds of small trees, each one representing an animal that had died during the conflict. Jake stopped beside a young oak tree with a simple plaque. "Rex, German Shepherd, died protecting the Nexari crystal ship Aurora. Good boy." Staff Sergeant Tony Chen knelt beside the tree, tending the soil around its base. Luna, his new partner, lay quietly nearby. The young German Shepherd watched her human with the patient understanding that only dogs possess. "How are you doing?" "Tony?" Jake asked. "Better," Tony replied, not looking up from his work. "Rex would have liked knowing he has a tree. He always enjoyed parks back on Earth." Jake nodded and moved on. The garden was full of humans caring for trees that honored their fallen partners. Sergeant Ben Parker worked near a cluster of apple trees representing the horses lost during the ground assaults. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan sat reading beneath a pine tree planted for Odin, who had died guiding the final assault on the Void Fortress. The memorial had been Ambassador Keelthera's idea. The Etherian had spent weeks trying to understand human grief over animal deaths. Her conclusion was that humans needed a way to honor partnerships that transcended simple military cooperation. "The trees will grow," she had explained, "like memory of bonds that changed galactic history." Jake reached the center of the garden, where a fountain surrounded by benches provided a quiet place for reflection. Dr. Amy Rodriguez sat there with her data tablets, compiling the final reports on animal performance during the war. "How are the studies coming?" Jake asked, taking a seat beside her. "Extraordinary results," Amy replied. "We documented abilities that our science cannot fully explain. Dogs detecting quantum signatures across 7 dimensions. Ravens navigating non-Euclidean space as easily as flying through trees. Horses predicting attacks that existed in future probability states." Any theories on how they developed these abilities? Amy smiled. Earth tried to kill everything for 4 billion years. Life on our planet evolved every possible survival strategy. What the galaxy calls supernatural abilities are just adaptations to a world that used every trick imaginable to eliminate life. Jake thought about that as he watched aliens moving through the garden. Krillian warriors studied the memorial plaques with respectful curiosity. Young Nexari researchers took light pattern recordings of the tree arrangements. Even photonic energy. Beings dimmed their radiance while moving through the peaceful space. They're all trying to understand what they missed, Jake observed. The concept of interspecies emotional bonds, Amy agreed. Most galactic civilizations eliminated other sapient species during their development. They chose efficiency over cooperation, logic over emotional connection. General Marcus Webb approached their bench. The old soldier looked tired but satisfied. 3 months of negotiations with 200 species had been more exhausting than the war itself. The Galactic Council has reached a decision, Webb announced. They're establishing the Interspecies Cooperation Academy here on Sanctuary Station. What exactly will they teach? Jake asked. How to work with Earth animals. The Krillians want to learn pack tactics. The Etherians are requesting studies on emotional bonding with other species. Even the Nexari want to understand how biological partnerships can surpass technological solutions. Amy looked amazed. They want to learn from us? More than that, Webb said. They want to transform their entire approach to military cooperation. The war proved that emotional bonds create tactical advantages that pure logic cannot match. Jake felt a surge of pride mixed with sadness. The galaxy had learned valuable lessons, but the cost had been high. Nearly half of Earth's animal partners had died to teach those lessons. A soft chime announced an incoming message. Webb activated his communicator to reveal Admiral Lisa Grant calling from Earth. General, Lisa's voice came through clearly. I have news that will interest you. The first graduating class from the Earth Animal Partner Academy is ready for deployment. Jake's heart lifted. New animals? 800 dogs, 300 horses, 100 ravens, and 50 dolphins, all trained specifically for interdimensional warfare, plus their human partners, trained in advanced cooperative tactics. The implications were enormous. Earth was preparing to supply animal partners to species across the galaxy. The unique evolutionary adaptations that had saved the Milky Way would now spread to other civilizations. There's more, Lisa continued. We've had requests from 12 different species asking for Earth animals as permanent partners, not just military contracts, but long-term partnerships. Dr. Rodriguez looked excited. Cultural exchange programs? More like adoption programs, Lisa replied. Apparently, several alien species want to experience the emotional bonding that they observed during the war. Jake thought about Commander Vextar, who had specifically requested permission to work with a German shepherd. The massive Krillian warrior had been fascinated by the loyalty and intelligence he witnessed during combat operations. The Etherians are particularly interested, Lisa continued. Ambassador Keelthera wants to study how emotional bonds affect psychic development. She thinks working with Earth animals might enhance their natural telepathic abilities. As the conversation continued, Jake noticed movement at the garden's entrance. A group of young aliens approached hesitantly, students from various species, who had come to study at the new academy. Leading them was a small Krillian who couldn't be more than a few years old by their species' standards. The young alien moved carefully between the memorial trees, reading each plaque with obvious reverence. "Are you a student here?" Jake asked when the young Krillian approached their bench. "Yes, Human Morrison," the alien replied and carefully practiced. "English. I am Kextel. I study cooperation tactics with Earth animals. What have you learned so far?" The young Krillian's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "That strength comes not from being strongest, but from trusting those who choose to stand beside you." Jake smiled. "That's a good lesson. Earth animals teach. This better than any technology," Kextal continued. "They could abandon humans when danger comes, but they stay because they choose loyalty over safety." Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward with interest. "And what does that teach you about military tactics?"